Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Those Crafty Kinsess. Last week we just finished our dungeon tile challenge. That was a lot of fun. While I was doing that video, something popped into my head about doing a playable terrain piece for D&D that had some cool features on it. So that's going to be the build I'm focusing on in this video. It may just be a solo video for me, but what I want to do is take this water feature that I put in my dungeon tile and I want to incorporate that into a bigger build. I already know that I'm going to be using XPS foam. It's this 1-inch thick insulation piece that you get from Home Depot. So what I'm thinking is make something like a cave that has the water feature in it, but I also want to step it up a notch and incorporate these little LED lights that I found at the Dollar Tree. And they come in a pack like this. They're only $1. Somehow I'm going to incorporate these lights either underneath or on top to illuminate the water feature. And I think when you're playing your game in the low light conditions, that when you turn those lights on, that's going to look really cool. So I have no idea how to start this piece, but let's just start and see what we end up with. I sketched out a rough design of how I wanted this to look. I figured I would have 3 levels and a water feature in the middle between the first and second layer. So I'm just going to go ahead and sketch this out in pencil into my XPS foam. Then I'm going to head over to my hot wire cutter and cut out all 3 pieces of this terrain build. Next, I'm just going to roughly sketch out the second layer of this. Again, there's no pre-planning really involved. I'm just kind of cutting out a general shape that I want for the second and the third layers and just stack them all together, and I'll figure out a way to get these to work together. Next, I'm just going to use a plain blade from a box cutter. You can also use your fingernails to help remove some of the material from the edges. Additionally, I'm going to need to carve out this water feature on the bottom part of the template. So just transfer the line down to the bottom piece, and then we're going to start removing material to create the water feature. Next, using whatever blade you're comfortable with, just go ahead and start removing some of this material. We are also going to go underneath almost all the way to the back to give it that cave-like look. And a little cleanup wouldn't hurt because at this point we're making a huge mess. Next, I'm just using a box cutter blade to cut the edges on this feature here. My cheap utility knives are really thin, so I needed a thicker blade in order to do this. Once most of the material has been removed from the underside of the cave piece, we're going to start focusing on the base where the main water feature is going to go. So using an X-Acto knife, we're just going to cut out the rough template here, and using a carving tool or your fingers, you can just start removing the material almost all the way to the back, but not quite all the way. I'm also going to want to remove more material from the back side, which is going to be the deep end, so to speak, of this water feature. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut with an X-Acto knife almost all the way to the back and then start removing that material. I'm trying to work this out in my head right now. I've got these 2 pieces done, and I like the way it looks so far with this cave structure, and I'm trying to think ahead of time now, before I get too far into the build, how I'm going to incorporate the lights into this, because this is sort of the key, or the main reason I'm doing this is because I want to try and get some light underneath this water structure so it kind of illuminates the whole thing outward this way. So I'm actually probably going to go through the back here and then facing the lights in this way before I pour the catalyst in this pool here. Using a pencil, I'm just going to go ahead and mark where I'm going to cut out the holes from the back of the piece. And we're going to be removing enough material to get the tea lights to fit all the way into the back of the piece. And we will be sealing this with a hot glue gun, so this will be when we pour the liquid in here, this will all be sealed here, so don't worry about that. This is one of my favorite parts here, where we get to take a piece of foam and actually make it look like a volcanic lake bed almost, if you will. This is one of my favorite things to do. I love doing this. So we've got our just rough cut structure here, and I've got these LED lights already cut in, and I've got the parts cut up on top here so they fit together. Next, I'm going to use my hot glue gun to make sure that these tea lights are completely sealed in here. And I'm going to use a lot of glue here. Get around the edges here. Give it a good seal. Okay, and then we'll just fill it in. You're not really going to see this part back here, so it doesn't matter if you get a little messy with the glue. And when that dries up, we'll be good to go. And we'll fit the top piece on after that. Funny thing, I actually managed to glue one regular flickering light and then a color changing light. And I'm not sure if this is a mistake or not, but I'm just going to let this go. Otherwise, I would pull this one out and put another one of those in. But I have a feeling that maybe that mistake was for a reason. Of course, you're going to hate me for this. This is my mystery ingredient in this can, which has no label on it, and only I know what it is. I'm not going to tell you for now, but I can tell you that you probably won't have that. All right, back to my favorite ingredient that nobody knows about. And to be honest, this has been in my garage for probably 20 years. And there's a specific purpose for that kind of a chemical. But again, with what I'm about to do, you can go to the Dollar Tree store and get nail polish. Acetone works, although acetone does not give you this nice pitting that this chemical does here. So we're going to melt foam right now, and it is a little stinky. I'm using chemicals, and if you want, you can use a respirator. I've got a fan going right now, so I'm not too worried about it. So when you're doing this part, you want to just apply a minimal amount at first and then increase it as you go. What you don't want to do is melt too much and have it go through your piece. Now we can start hitting the sides of the terrain pieces, and you can see how fast this chemical works in particular. It actually is instant. As soon as you put it on, it will start melting the foam, so I have to be careful not to put too much on. I'm going to wait for the chemical to stop reacting, and then we'll see how it looks. Well, okay, it didn't take much time to decide that. I put it on here on my sample piece, and I really liked it. I went ahead and textured all three pieces with the chemical, and I'm very happy with the results. Very cool. So here it is without the paint or anything. I've just put the lights in the back, and we've got the cave structure, and I just turned the lights on with just minimal light in the background here. I think this is going to look really cool once we get the water feature in there. Now I think it's a good time for a coat of Mod Podge. I'm not going to do any more melting on here, and I'm happy with the way these two pieces look and fit together. So before I glue anything or make anything permanent, let's get the Mod Podge on there. I don't know if I'm going to use this or not, but I just painted it anyway. It was that little extra sample piece I'm going to use. I'll probably end up carving this into something to use on the top. But again, I never have anything planned before these builds, so I'll do this part, and then if I think I need something else, I'll just add to it. So to start off, I'm going to use a dark blue to establish the deep parts of the water feature. While the dark blue is drying there, I'm going to go ahead and give the rest of these structures a coat of pewter gray. You could go right to a brown or a different color if you want, but I think this is a good way to establish the base coat. I want to sort of recreate the water feature that I came up with in this dungeon tile here, so I'm going to use similar colors to replicate that look. So the other two colors here are sky blue and then aqua blue. While the first two layers of paint are drying in the water feature, I'm going to go ahead and add a dark brown, which is actually walnut in this case, to all three of my terrain pieces. Next, I decided it would be cool to have walkways and staircases going up the side of this piece. I decided to use a tongue depressor to make my staircase templates. So all you need to do is cut out this 45-degree pattern and then cut the tongue depressor in half, and you'll have the template to build a staircase. I figured out how much length of staircase I need, and it's just a small amount. It's like 1.5 inches, 2 inches. And so this part is going to go down here to start the staircase. I used my hot glue gun to just glue the individual planks on the staircase. So I've got all my bridge pieces built here, or platform pieces, I guess you could say. So I'll just show you how they go. I'm going to finish the layers of this water feature with a light green. It says Sea Aqua. And I am by no means an expert in painting, so I'm just going back and forth between different colors, deciding between a lime green or a mint green. In this case, I chose to go with the mint green, and I didn't regret it. Next, I'm going to focus back to the rock portions of the terrain, and I decided on using a candy bar green just because it had an appealing look to it, and I didn't want it to be too dark. After that, a dry brush of tan or khaki tan is, I think, a good way to finish off this piece. That color scheme, I think, is going to work out pretty well. It looks a little bit light right now, but when we put the black wash on it, that's going to tone that way down. Next, I'm going to give all my wood pieces a coat of golden brown. Next, I went ahead and laid out all of the walkways and staircases on the piece to make sure that they were going to fit where I wanted them to go. But you don't want to glue them on yet. I decided to create a well for the top of my terrain piece, and I thought the XPS foam would do well here. I went ahead and cut out a cylinder, and using a blade I put the brick details in here, and then went over it with a pen to establish the grout lines. I also made sure to continue the detail to the inside of the well. Now, if you recall, this was the piece that I was going to throw away, but I decided to actually use it, and you'll see how it works out by the end of this video. Next, I decided to go ahead and add texture with my foil and soldering iron technique. After that, you'll just need to go over the grout lines with a pen again to reestablish the bricks. So to make this piece work, if you remember, I originally cut a hole in here to get a tea light to fit in. So now I created a small staircase to fit in place of that. So again, I never really know where I'm going with these builds, but in this case, I think this worked out great. Next is going to be a base coat of Mod Podge, and then pewter gray and tan over that. I'm going to finish my wood pieces with an acrylic burnt umber ink, and this works great just right on top of the golden brown paint. So what I'm doing here is I'm covering the top part of the light right here. It's a little bright if you're staring right into it. So what I did is I cut off this little piece of the candle top. It's actually like a soft plastic. And then I cut it in half. And what I'm going to do is put some foil in there so it's reflective. I'm just going to crazy glue that in there. And then I'm just going to glue it on top of that light right there. And of course I'm going to go over that with paint so you don't see it. And I just think that will help a lot. Okay, moving on to the well. I have these two pieces that are going to go together, and the well itself is going to need one of those little roofs on it. So what I did is I just took a couple of my coffee stirring sticks and just made a couple of roof pieces, which are going to go like this. The side supports will look something like this, so I'll go ahead and use my tacky glue here. And I'll set these aside to dry while I go back to my well and finish this with a black wash. I found these wood shingles in my workshop, and they are normally used for things like dollhouse roofs, but I thought that they would be perfect for the top of my well roof. So I'm just going to break these in half to give a sort of rough texture, and then I'll go ahead and glue them to the roof. I started off with hot glue here, but then quickly realized how messy it was going to be, so I went back to my tacky glue. Once all the roof pieces were dry, I glued them to the side pieces and went ahead and finished them with a brown stain. Any color will do. All right, I am ready to give my terrain pieces a black wash. And I want to make sure that I don't get any in this pool area here, because I'm actually going to use a clear catalyst in here for the lake or the water effect. One thing I sort of stopped and decided I wanted to do, I thought it would be cool to have one more light up coming up from underneath, so to speak, for the well. It's going to require me to put in one more light, but I think it'll be worth it. So what I'm going to do is install this little LED light. And I'm actually going to cut a hole in the top here and recess that down. So I've sketched a circle right around where I want to cut this out. And I don't want it poking all the way through the bottom, but I do want to cut this all the way through. Now I can go ahead and add my stair piece here to cover up this part of the tea light. All I need to do now is glue on a few of these pieces. I need to leave that unglued so I can turn the light on and off in there. And I'm going to go ahead and glue up all of these pieces here because we're done painting. I used a bent paper clip to create the crankshaft for the rope, which will go down the center of the well. After I finished that, I went ahead and glued down all of the wood planks and staircases to the piece, and I'm ready to start pouring my glaze coat water feature. After mixing equal parts of A and B together, you need to mix this thoroughly to make sure the catalyst is going to harden. Also, when you pour the catalyst, you want to do this from a distance and pour it slowly to make sure it fills all of the cracks. Once you pour all of the resin into the water feature, you want to go ahead and cover this with a bowl until the resin cures. Going back to my well, the rope going down the center of it was just too white, so I went ahead and took some brown wash and just painted that, and now it looks like normal worn rope. Next, we're going to finish the piece up with some earth tone grout by just painting some PVS glue onto the surface and then sprinkling the grout over the glue. To sort of finish this piece off, I'm going to go ahead and add some flocking to some of the areas on the piece, and you can do this wherever you want. So after that last step, adding the earth grout to the top and bottom layer should be plenty and you can be done with your build. I just decided to add a couple of more things to mine. I put some grass flocking around the water feature here, and also I thought it would be nice to have some of that moss in between the bricks on the well, so that added a nice little detail. I 3D printed a little well bucket, which I put on there. I thought that was a nice little detail. And then I had this cactus armature, so I thought I'd add it to this piece, and I think that turned out really well. So overall, I'm really happy with this piece. It looks great, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Please send me your comments and let me know if you liked this build. And if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, please do that. And we'll see you next week for another build or challenge.